When they found the Soviet operative's body, the bullet had passed clean through his heart from a distance of 1.6 miles. In 1989, nobody believed such a shot was possible. This is the story of the woman who made that impossible shot and the price she paid when betrayed by the very government she had sworn to protect. The wind whispered through the pines surrounding Eleanor, Ellie Reeves' modest home in Bedford Valley, Virginia. At 52, she moved with the deliberate grace of someone who had spent decades mastering the art of controlled movement. Her students at Bedford Elementary knew her as the patient art teacher with kind eyes and a quiet voice. None of them could imagine those same eyes had once peered through high-powered scopes, making split-second calculations that ended the lives of America's enemies. Ellie completed her morning routine with military precision, checking window locks, scanning the perimeter, and verifying that each hidden weapon cache remained undisturbed. Old habits from another life. 23 years of living as Eleanor Reeves hadn't erased the training of Master Chief Eleanor Reed callsign, Ghost Echo, the most lethal sniper in the history of American special operations. Her small breakfast table faced the eastern window, allowing maximum visibility of the approaching driveway while keeping her back against a solid wall. As she sipped her coffee, her mind drifted to Berlin, 1989.
Wahasim.
The night air bit through her thermal gear as she lay motionless on the rooftop, her breath creating small controlled clouds in the freezing Berlin winter. 19 hours in position, muscles cramping, but Ghost Echo never moved. Not even a millimeter. The scope of her custom Macmillan rifle revealed the target building 517 meters away, a distance considered beyond the capabilities of any human marksman. Echo confirmed status. The voice crackled in her earpiece. She didn't respond immediately. The wind had shifted 3 degrees. She recalculated, adjusting for the Coriolis effect caused by the Earth's rotation at this latitude. Her finger rested alongside the trigger guard, not yet touching the trigger. Echo HQ needs confirmation. The package is expected in 2 minutes. Still, she didn't respond. Speaking would disrupt her breathing pattern. The target would appear for perhaps 5 seconds, a single opportunity at a shot no one believed possible. The black sedan appeared at exactly 0217, just as intelligence had predicted. The rear door opened. A man emerged, Colonel Nikolai Baranov, KGB's master strategist, behind 3 assassination campaigns against Western intelligence assets. Beside him, partially obscured, stood an American in a tailored suit. Through her scope, Echo could see Barananov's face clearly illuminated briefly by his lighter as he lit a cigarette. She made her final calculations, controlling her heartbeat through specialized breathing techniques. Between heartbeats, in the microsecond of perfect stillness, her fingers squeezed. The 175-grain match-grade bullet left the barrel at 850 feet per second, traveling through the freezing air for over 3 seconds before striking Baranov directly through the heart. By the time the sound of the shot reached the street, Echo had already disassembled her rifle and disappeared into the shadows of a city on the brink of historic change. In her earpiece, "Dear God, Echo did it. Alert Washington, the wall is about to fall." The American in the tailored suit looked up, scanning the distant rooftops with cold calculation, his face forever burned into Echo's memory. The persistent buzz of her phone pulled Ellie back to the present. The text displayed a number she hadn't seen in decades. Baker's has what you need. Old friends remember. Baker's gun shop sat on the outskirts of Bedford, catering primarily to local hunters and weekend sports shooters. Ellie had deliberately avoided the shop since establishing her new identity, knowing that true firearms expertise would draw unwanted attention. But something had changed. Someone knew she was here. Jim Baker, the shop's owner, was a heavy-set man in his mid-50s with thinning gray hair and the overly familiar smile of someone who'd spent decades in retail. His 2 assistants, Kyle and Pete, lounged behind the counter, their posture straightening slightly as Ellie entered wearing a simple sundress and practical flats. "Well, hello there, sweetheart," Baker called out, his voice carrying the rehearsed enthusiasm of a practiced salesman. "What can we do for you today? Looking for something for personal protection, maybe?" Ellie smiled politely. "Actually, I was hoping to look at hunting rifles. I'm interested in taking up deer hunting this season." The 3 men exchanged amused glances, their expressions betraying an assessment they didn't bother to hide. Deer hunting. Kyle, the younger assistant, failed to suppress a chuckle. "Ma'am, have you ever fired a rifle before?" "Not really," Ellie lied smoothly. "My late father used to hunt, and I thought it might be a way to connect with his memory." Baker nodded with exaggerated understanding. "Well, hunting rifles aren't toys. They're serious tools that require considerable strength and experience to handle properly. He walked to a display case containing small caliber rifles with synthetic stocks in various colors. For someone like you, I'd recommend starting with something simple, maybe a 22 caliber that won't kick too hard. He pulled out a pink accented rifle that looked more appropriate for a child's toy collection than a serious hunting implement. This little beauty is perfect for ladies. Its lightweight, comes in a nice color, and has minimal recoil. Ellie maintained her polite expression while examining the rifle with deliberate awkwardness. During her military career, she'd qualified on weapon systems that required top-secret clearance even to view the specifications. I was actually hoping to look at something with more range, she said carefully. Perhaps a .308 caliber. The three men burst into laughter as if she'd suggested buying an anti-aircraft gun. Oh, sweetheart, Pete, the older assistant, interjected. A .308 would knock you flat on your back. Those are serious rifles for serious hunters. Baker leaned on the counter with condescending patience. Listen, honey, I've been selling firearms for 27 years, and I can tell you that ladies like yourself always think they want the big rifles until they actually try to shoot one. Ellie nodded as if absorbing this valuable wisdom. Could I at least look at one of the .308 rifles just to see? Baker sighed dramatically. Sure, but don't say I didn't warn you. He retrieved a Remington 700 in .308 caliber from a locked display case, a rifle nearly identical to the platform Echo had used for her record-setting elimination in Berlin. This weighs almost 9 pounds, Baker said, placing it on the counter with exaggerated care. It has enough power to drop an elk at 400 yards. Feel free to hold it, but be careful. Ellie reached for the rifle with deliberately hesitant movements. The moment her hands touched the familiar weight of the stock and barrel, muscle memory from thousands of hours of training threatened to take over. Her grip automatically adjusted to optimal position for stability and control. Her stance shifted imperceptibly to accommodate the weapon's weight distribution. Her breathing pattern changed to the slow, controlled rhythm that snipers use for precision shooting. She caught herself after a moment resuming the awkward handling Baker expected. Oh my, she said, pretending to struggle with the rifle's weight. It is heavy, and the scope looks so complicated. That's a loopholed 3.9 times scope, Kyle explained condescendingly. The numbers control magnification, but honestly, you'd never need more than 3 times magnification for the kind of hunting a beginner should do. Ellie nodded as if this was fascinating new information, while thinking about the 25-power Schmidt and Bender PM2 scope she'd used for her longest confirmed elimination. The important thing to remember, Pete added authoritatively, is that real hunting requires understanding ballistics, wind compensation, range estimation, technical stuff that takes years to master. Years, Baker agreed solemnly. And that's assuming you have natural talent, which, no offense, most women just don't have for long-range shooting. Ellie was preparing to respond when the bell above the shop's front door chimed. She glanced toward the entrance and instantly recognized the man who entered, though he wore civilian clothes instead of the military uniform she remembered. Colonel James Marshall stood just over 6 feet tall, his 75-year-old frame still carrying the physical bearing of decades in Special Operations Command. His casual attire couldn't disguise the tactical awareness in his movements or the way his eyes automatically scanned the room for potential threats. Most importantly, he was staring directly at Ellie with an expression of measured recognition. For 23 years, Colonel Marshall had believed the official record that Master Chief Eleanor Reed had died during a classified operation. The government had provided a closed-casket funeral with full military honors at Arlington National Cemetery. Marshall himself had delivered the eulogy for America's most effective covert operative. Yet here she stood examining a hunting rifle in a small-town gun shop. "Excuse me," Marshall said quietly, addressing Baker, while keeping his eyes on Ellie. "I couldn't help but notice the lady is looking at hunting rifles." Baker smiled, apparently relieved to have another male customer who would understand the situation. Yeah, trying to explain that she should start with something more appropriate for her size and experience. Marshall's expression remained neutral, but Ellie noticed the slight tightening around his eyes that indicated controlled anger. "Is that right?" Marshall said carefully. "What kind of rifle is she interested in?" "She asked about a .308, Kyle volunteered with an eye roll. "Can you believe it?" Marshall looked directly at Ellie, recognition burning in his eyes. He was giving her the opportunity to maintain her cover or acknowledge their shared past. "Ma'am," Marshall said with careful respect, "have you had any experience with long-range shooting?" This was the moment that would determine whether 23 years of careful anonymity would continue or end forever. Ellie could maintain her role as the confused civilian or trust that Marshall's presence meant something significant had changed. She made her decision. Some, Ellie said quietly, her voice carrying a different quality than the soft-spoken art teacher persona she'd been maintaining. Marshall nodded slowly. What's the longest shot you've ever made? The three store employees watched this exchange with growing confusion. Baker sensed that something in the conversation's dynamic had shifted. Ellie looked Marshall directly in the eyes. 2517 meters, Berlin, winter 1989. The silence that followed lasted exactly 12 seconds. Marshall's face progressed through a series of expressions, confirmation, recognition, and finally something approaching reverence. He'd suspected who she was, but hearing her casually mention the longest confirmed sniper elimination in military history made the reality hit him like a physical blow. Good God, he whispered, barely audible. Baker, Kyle, and Pete stared at both of them with complete confusion. The number Ellie had mentioned meant nothing to them, but Marshall's reaction suggested its significance. I'm sorry, Baker said slowly, but what exactly is going on here? Marshall never took his eyes off Ellie. Sir, you have been trying to sell a hunting rifle to someone who holds the world record for precision shooting at distance. World record, Pete repeated skeptically. Marshall's voice carried the weight of decades of classified operations. Ma'am, is it true that you made the Berlin shot? Ellie nodded once. An Operation Kingfisher. Another nod. Marshall stepped back, and to the complete astonishment of everyone in the store came to attention and rendered a crisp military salute. Master Chief, he said, his voice carrying years of professional respect. It's an honor. Baker, Kyle, and Pete stared at this scene as if reality had suddenly shifted. The pretty art teacher in the sundress was being saluted by a man who clearly had serious military credentials. I don't understand, Baker said weakly. Sir, Marshall said patiently. You've been speaking to Master Chief Eleanor Reed, call sign Ghost Echo, the most lethal precision shooter in the history of U.S. Special Operations. Kyle's mouth fell open, but she wanted a pink 22. No, Marshall corrected. She wanted to look at a 308 hunting rifle. You decided she wasn't capable of handling it. Pete was staring at Ellie as if seeing her for the first time. Your military record was sealed, Ellie said simply. I've been officially deceased for 23 years. Baker's face cycled through embarrassment, disbelief, and growing horror as he realized how badly he'd misjudged the situation. But you said you'd never fired a rifle before. I said, not really, Ellie corrected gently, which is technically true. I've never fired a civilian hunting rifle for recreational purposes. Marshall studied Ellie's civilian appearance with professional interest. Ma'am, if you don't mind my asking what brings you to a gun shop in Virginia after all this time? Ellie considered how much to reveal. I received a message that old friends were here. I assume that was you. Marshall's brow furrowed. No, ma'am. I found you through other channels. I wasn't certain until I saw you in person. This revelation sent a chill through Ellie's spine. If Marshall hadn't sent the message, someone else knew her identity. Colonel, she said, reverting to military formality. I think we need to talk. Marshall nodded. My thoughts exactly, Master Chief. Baker had finally found his voice again. You really hold a world record for sniper shooting. Several records Marshall answered for her, including longest confirmed elimination, most eliminations in a single engagement, and highest success rate in deep cover operations. Kyle was staring at Ellie with a mixture of awe and terror. How many? 187 confirmed eliminations across 4 continents, Marshall said when Ellie remained silent. Plus classified operations that cannot be discussed. Pete sat down heavily on a stool behind the counter, and we were trying to sell her a pink 22. Nothing wrong with a 22, Ellie said kindly. They're excellent training rifles, but I was hoping for something with a little more range for precision work. Baker was looking at the rifle display with new understanding. Ma'am, we have some custom precision rifles in the back. Military-grade equipment that I don't usually show to civilian customers. The Remington will bar fine with the proper modifications, Ellie said, professionally assessing the rifle. The trigger needs adjustment for a cleaner brain, probably down to about 2 pounds. The stock could use modifications for better cheek weld, and this scope needs upgrading to something with higher magnification and better glass quality. Marshall was watching her weapon inspection with professional interest. What kind of scope are you thinking, Night Force or Schmidt and Bender? Probably 525 times magnification with first focal plane, reticle, and proper mil-dot calibration, Ellie replied, falling easily into the technical language she hadn't used in decades. Baker was taking notes as if receiving a masterclass in precision rifles. We can order whatever you need, military-grade optics custom trigger, work stock modifications. Kyle, who had been silently processing this revelation, finally spoke up. Ma'am, I'm really sorry about earlier. We didn't know. You couldn't have known, Ellie said gently. I was playing a role and you responded to what you saw. No harm done. Marshall produced a business card with a handwritten address on the back. Ma'am, I have access to a private range about 15 miles from here. Complete privacy with distances out to 200 yards. When your rifle is ready, I'd be honored if you'd join me there. Ellie studied the card. What's this really about, Colonel? Why find me now after all this time? Marshall's expression turned grave. Not here, Master Chief. Too many years. Ellie understood immediately. Whatever had brought Marshall to find her, it wasn't a social call. After 23 years of living in the shadows, her past had finally caught up with her. 2 weeks for the modifications, she asked Baker. Yes, ma'am. I'll do the work myself. As Ellie prepared to leave, Marshall stepped closer. Master Chief, there's someone else who's been waiting to see you, someone who never believed the official story. Who? Ellie asked, though she already suspected the answer. Master Sergeant William Harrison, Marshall said quietly. Iron Bill is still alive, and he's been looking for you almost as long as I have. The name hit Ellie like a physical blow. William Iron Bill Harrison had been her primary instructor, the legendary Vietnam-era sniper who had trained her and recognized her exceptional talent. The man who had once held the long-distance shooting record before she broke it. The man she had believed died during the same operation that forced her into hiding. Iron Bill is alive, she whispered, her composure cracking for the first time. Marshall nodded. There's a lot you don't know, Master Chief. A lot that was kept from all of us. As they stepped outside the gun shop, Marshall checked their surroundings with practiced efficiency. The world's changed since you've been gone, Echo, but some enemies never forget. What enemies specifically? Ellie asked, her mind already calculating threats and contingencies. Marshall's expression darkened. The ones inside our own government. The ones who gave the order to eliminate Sentinel Echo, and everyone who knew about it knew. Sentinel Echo was my unit designation, Ellie said carefully. Why would our own people want it eliminated? Because of what you saw in Berlin, Marshall replied. Because of who was with Baranov that night. Because you were never supposed to come back alive from that mission. The implications settled over Ellie like a cold shroud. Her final mission hadn't been just another elimination, it had been something far more significant. And the American in the tailored suit standing beside Baranov hadn't been collateral damage. He had been a secondary target she'd chosen not to engage. I need to see Iron Bill, she said finally. He's waiting for us, Marshall confirmed, but we need to be careful. If I found you, others might too. As they walked toward Marshall's nondescript SUV, Ellie caught the reflection of movement in a parked car's window. The subtle shift of a telephoto lens tracking their movement from a building across the street. They were already being watched. The private shooting range occupied a secluded valley 30 minutes outside Bedford. The winding gravel road leading to it was unmarked with a simple gate requiring a key code for entry. Marshall drove in silence, occasionally checking the mirrors for tails with the practiced ease of someone who had spent decades in covert operations. Who else knows I'm alive? Ellie asked as they approached the range. A very small circle, Marshall replied. Iron Bill, myself, and potentially one or two others from the original command structure. After Berlin, when everything went sideways, most of Sentinel Echo's personnel records were purged. Those who weren't eliminated were reassigned with new identities. Like me, Ellie said quietly. Your case was different, Marshall explained. You were the unit's most effective asset. They couldn't risk you being compromised, or worse, recruited by foreign intelligence. So they gave you the ultimate deep cover a dead operator can't be turned. As they pulled into the range's gravel parking area, Ellie noticed a solitary figure standing at the 600-yard firing line. Even at a distance, she recognized the ramrod-straight posture of Master Sergeant William Harrison. At 78, Iron Bill Harrison still carried himself with the disciplined bearing of a career special operations soldier. His weathered face had gained additional lines, his once dark hair now completely silver, but his eyes remained the same piercing blue orbs that had once been legendary for spotting the slightest movement at extreme distances. As Ellie approached, those eyes widened with recognition. For a moment, the hardened veteran's expression softened with an emotion he rarely displayed. Ghost, he said simply, his voice gruff with age and emotion. Iron Bill, she replied, her own composure threatening to break. Without another word, the old soldier stepped forward and embraced her, an unprecedented display from a man famous for his emotional restraint. When he stepped back, his eyes were suspiciously moist. 23 years, he said, shaking his head. 23 years believing my best student was dead because of bad intelligence. Should have known better. The ghost doesn't die that easily. They told me you were killed in the extraction, Ellie said quietly. Iron Bill's expression hardened. They told a lot of people, a lot of things, most of it lies. Marshall joined them, scanning the tree line with habitual vigilance. We should move this inside, too exposed out here. The range's small clubhouse contained a secure room in the back, originally designed as a classroom for advanced marksmanship training. Marshall locked the door behind them and activated an electronic jamming device, standard counter-surveillance equipment that would prevent any listening devices from functioning. All right, he said, spreading several folders on the central table. Time you learned what really happened in Berlin and why they've been hunting us ever since. Iron Bill took a seat across from Ellie. You remember your final mission briefing? Eliminate Colonel Nikolai Baranov, KGB Foreign Operations Director, Ellie recited. Primary target of opportunity during his meeting with an unknown asset in East Berlin. Operation Classify Priority Alpha Presidential Finding Authorization. And what did you actually see when Baranov arrived? Marshall prompted. Ellie's expression remained neutral, though her mind raced back to that freezing rooftop. Baranov exited the vehicle as expected. There was another man with him, American mid-50s tailored suit, not identified in the briefing materials. But you recognized him, Iron Bill pressed. Ellie hesitated, then nodded once. Deputy Secretary Raymond Shaw, Department of Defense. I'd seen him twice during classified briefings at the Pentagon. Marshall opened one of the folders, revealing a photograph taken from surveillance footage, grainy but clear enough to confirm Ellie's identification. Raymond Shaw. At the time, he was supposedly in Geneva for arms reduction talks. Official records show him checking into his hotel that evening. Impossible, Ellie said. He was in Berlin with Baranov. Exactly, Arnbill confirmed. And your mission parameters were explicit: eliminate Baranov and any persons accompanying him. The implication hung in the air between them. I made the decision to eliminate only Baranov, Ellie said carefully. Secondary target appeared to be American military or intelligence, required confirmation before engagement. That decision saved your life, Marshall said quietly, and condemned the rest of Sentinel Echo to elimination. Iron Bill pushed forward another folder. Shaw returned to Washington and immediately initiated a cleanup operation. Every member of Sentinel Echo who might have known about the Berlin operation was either eliminated or deep covered like you. Of the original 37 operatives, only 4 survived. Why? Ellie asked, her mind processing the horrifying scope of the betrayal. What was Shaw doing with Baranov? Marshall's expression was grim. In 1981, President Reagan authorized the formation of Sentinel Echo as a counter-intelligence unit with extreme prejudice capability. The Cold War was reaching its most dangerous point. Soviet aggression was escalating. We needed an option beyond conventional military response or mad doctrine. I know the history, Ellie said. I lived it. What you don't know, Iron Bill continued, is that Shaw was running a parallel operation. While Sentinel Echo was eliminating Soviet assets, Shaw was selling them something far more valuable than intelligence. He pushed forward a final document, a heavily redacted report with only a few visible lines. One phrase stood out starkly against the black redaction marks: Minuteman III launch sequence modifications. Ellie felt the blood drain from her face. Nuclear launch codes. Shaw was selling nuclear secrets. Worse, Marshall said quietly. He was selling vulnerability information, how to compromise our nuclear deterrent. The meeting you observed was the final handover. Shaw had been working with Baranov for years, systematically undermining America's nuclear security in exchange for massive payments laundered through shell corporations. When you eliminated Baranov but left Shaw alive, Iron Bill explained, you inadvertently triggered a panic. Shaw couldn't risk exposure, so he used his authority to eliminate everyone connected to Sentinel Echo. The official story became that a rogue intelligence unit had exceeded its authority and needed to be disbanded. And now, Ellie asked, her mind already calculating the implications. Marshall's expression hardened. Shaw is preparing to announce his candidacy for President of the United States. His campaign will officially launch next month. He spent 23 years building the perfect cover story, the patriotic defense official who helped win the Cold War. Why come to me now? Ellie asked. What can I possibly do against someone with that kind of power and protection? Iron Bill leaned forward, his eyes burning with the intensity that had made him legendary in special operations circles. Because you're the only one who can testify to seeing him with Baranov, the only living witness to his treason. And because, Marshall added, someone else has discovered you're alive, someone connected to Shaw. The message that led you to the gun shop wasn't from us, which means they're closing in. We found you just in time. Ellie processed this information with the calm efficiency that had made her Sentinel Echo's most effective operative. So I have a choice: run again or stand and fight. There's a third option, came a new voice from the doorway. They turned to see a woman in her 60s standing in the threshold, her posture indicating military training despite her civilian clothes. Senator Catherine Hayes, Marshall explained, former Naval Intelligence, currently heading the Senate Intelligence Oversight Committee, and the only person in Washington with both the authority and the inclination to bring down Raymond Shaw. Hayes added, stepping into the room, "If you're willing to help us, Master Chief Reed." Ellie studied the newcomer carefully. "What exactly would helping you entail, Senator?" "Testimony eventually," Hayes replied. "But first we need evidence. Concrete proof connecting Shaw to Baranov and the nuclear secrets. Without it, it's just your word against a presidential candidate with powerful backers." "The evidence was classified," Marshall said, "buried in Pentagon archives or destroyed during the Sentinel Echo purge." "Maybe not all of it," Iron Bill interjected. "Echo wasn't the only one on Overwatch that night in Berlin." All eyes turned to the old sniper. "Shadow position," he explained. "Standard protocol for high-priority eliminations. Second shooter in case primary failed." "Who?" Marshall demanded. Iron Bill's weathered face creased in a rare smile. "Thomas Cooper. Callie sign Whisper. Not officially part of Sentinel Echo, on loan from Delta. Shaw didn't know about him, so he wasn't on the elimination list." "Is he still alive?" Hayes asked. "Very much so," Iron Bill confirmed. "Retired to Montana. Still has all his mission logs and surveillance photos, including, I believe, clear images of Shaw with Baranov taken through a spotting scope." For the first time since entering the room, Ellie felt a glimmer of hope. "So we have a witness and potential physical evidence. If we can reach Cooper before Shaw's people do," Marshall cautioned. Ellie stood, her decision made. "Then we'd better move quickly. How soon can we get to Montana?" "My private jet is fueled and waiting," Hayes said. "We can be airborne in an hour." As they prepared to leave, Ellie paused at the doorway. "I have a classroom full of children expecting their art teacher tomorrow morning. I can't just disappear without explanation." "You won't have to," Marshall assured her. "We've arranged a cover story: emergency family illness. Should buy us a few days." Ellie nodded, though the thought of her students sent an unexpected pang through her chest. After 23 years of living as Eleanor Reeves, part of her had genuinely become the patient art teacher who delighted in watching young minds discover their creativity. "There's something else you should know," Iron Bill said quietly as they walked toward the vehicles. "Shaw's not working alone. He never was. There are others involved, powerful people in positions of influence, people who've spent decades burying the truth about what happened. The records we've uncovered suggest a network of at least a dozen senior officials," Hayes confirmed. "We're calling them the Trust. They've been operating since the late Cold War, positioning themselves for eventual control of critical government functions." "And I'm the loose end they never tied up," Ellie concluded. "You're more than that," Marshall said, his voice carrying the weight of decades of service. "You're our last chance to expose the truth before one of them takes the Oval Office." As they reached the vehicles, Ellie caught sight of a glint of light from the distant tree line, the unmistakable reflection of a scope lens catching the afternoon sun. Without hesitation, she tackled Marshall to the ground, just as the crack of a high-powered rifle shattered the quiet of the range. "Sniper!" she shouted, already calculating the shooter's position from the sound and angle. Iron Bill dropped to cover behind a vehicle, his old instincts instantly awakened. "Distance, 800 yards northwest ridge," Ellie responded automatically, her mind processing the tactical situation with practiced efficiency. Hayes' security detail emerged from a second vehicle, weapons drawn, establishing a defensive perimeter. "Still think we have time to get to Montana?" Marshall asked grimly as bullets impacted nearby. Ellie's expression hardened, the art teacher persona falling away completely to reveal the cold precision of Ghost Echo. "They found us faster than expected," she acknowledged, "but they made one critical mistake." "What's that?" Hayes asked, crouched behind the engine block of her armored SUV. Ellie's eyes tracked to the distant ridgeline, mentally calculating distance, wind, and elevation with the skill that had once made her America's deadliest ghost. "They're hunting on my terrain now." The first bullet struck 6 inches from Marshall's head as Ellie pulled him behind the armored SUV. The second round pinged off the vehicle's reinforced door panel. 23 years of civilian life fell away in an instant as Ghost Echo's combat instincts surged through Ellie's veins. Single shooter bolt action. She assessed the distinctive rhythm of the shots, revealing the sniper's weapon. Military trained but not top tier, too eager on the follow-up shot. Iron Bill had already retrieved a spotting scope from his range bag. Northwest ridgeline, using the stand of pines for concealment, about 830 yards. Senator Hayes' security details, two stone-faced men with the unmistakable bearing of Secret Service, had taken defensive positions, weapons drawn. "Ma'am, we need to get you to safety," one said tersely. "No one's going anywhere with that shooter in position," Ellie countered. Her eyes scanned the immediate area, tactically assessing options. "Bill, is there still a rifle in the range locker?" The old sniper nodded. "Remington 700, custom build. Optics. Night Force 525 power, loaded with federal gold medal match." "Perfect." Ellie calculated the fastest route to the clubhouse. "I need 30 seconds to get to that rifle. Can you provide covering fire?" Hayes' security men exchanged glances. "We're not authorized to engage without direct threat to the senator." "Then stay with her," Ellie said. "Colonel, you still carry." Marshall produced a compact Sig Sauer from a shoulder holster. "Always." "On my mark, put suppressing fire on that ridgeline, not to hit, just to keep his head down while I move." Ellie's voice carried the calm authority that had once commanded elite operators in the world's most dangerous environments. Iron Bill grinned, decades falling away from his weathered face, just like old time's ghost. 3-2-1 mark. Marshall leaned around the SUV and fired 3 carefully spaced shots toward the distant trees. Simultaneously, Ellie sprinted toward the clubhouse in a low crouch, moving with the fluid efficiency of someone who had trained her body to be a weapon. Despite her 52 years, she covered the 30 yards to the building in seconds, never presenting a stable target. Inside, she moved directly to the gun locker, entering the combination Iron Bill had established decades ago. His mother's birthday unchanged through the years. The Remington waited inside, cleaned and ready, as she knew it would be. Iron Bill had always been methodical about his equipment. Ellie checked the rifle with practice movements, confirming load and scope settings. The weight felt familiar in her hands, not the same as her custom Macmillan from her operational days, but close enough. She moved to a side window that offered a clear view of the northwest ridgeline, setting up on a shooting bench with perfect sight lines. Through the scope, she systematically searched the tree line, controlling her breathing as she scanned for the telltale signs of a concealed shooter. There, a subtle disturbance in the natural pattern of the pines, the faintest glint of metal catching the afternoon sun. The shooter had good positioning, but lacked the discipline to control reflections from his scope. Amateur mistake. Ellie made her calculations: distance, 827 yards. Light crosswind from the southwest at approximately 8 mph, slight uphill angle requiring 2.3 minutes of elevation adjustment. Her finger rested alongside the trigger guard as she controlled her breathing, waiting for the perfect moment between heartbeats. She didn't aim to kill. Instead, she placed her shot precisely where she intended, into the wooden stock of the shooter's rifle, shattering it and rendering the weapon useless without harming the operator. A message, not an elimination. Through her scope, she watched the figure frantically scramble backward in surprise, abandoning the damaged rifle and retreating into the deeper woods. "Target neutralized," she reported calmly, returning to the others. "He's running, not wounded. That wasn't an assassination team, more likely surveillance that panicked when they realized we'd spotted them." "How can you be sure?" Hayes asked, visibly impressed by Ellie's efficiency. "A serious wet work team would have had multiple shooters in overlapping positions," Ellie explained. "This was reconnaissance that turned aggressive when compromised. They know we're working together now, which means our timeline just got much shorter." Marshall holstered his sidearm. "They'll report back. We have hours at most before a more professional team arrives." Iron Bill was already moving toward his truck. "I've got go bags packed. Old habits." "We need to move," Hayes agreed. "My jet is at the private airfield outside Lynchburg. Wheels up in 40 minutes. As they prepared to depart, Ellie paused. "I need 10 minutes at my house. There are things I can't leave behind." "Too risky," Marshall objected. "Your residence is likely compromised." 9 minutes. Ellie insisted, her tone making clear this wasn't negotiable. "I have equipment and documents that can't fall into the wrong hands, and I need to secure my classroom materials." The mention of her teaching responsibilities registered on the faces of the others, a reminder that Ghost Echo had built a genuine life as Eleanor Reeves' art teacher. "I'll go with you," Iron Bill volunteered. "2 is safer than 1. Eleanor Reeves' modest 2-bedroom home sat on 3 acres at the edge of Bedford. From the road, it appeared unremarkable, a simple farmhouse with a well-maintained garden and wide front porch. What wasn't visible were the carefully designed security measures overlapping fields of view from concealed cameras, reinforced entry points, and escape routes planned for every room. Ellie approached cautiously, noting immediately that the garden gnome near the front step had been moved 6 inches from its usual position, one of several subtle markers she used to detect intrusions. "Someone's been here," she whispered to Iron Bill as they circled to the back entrance. "Recently." The old sniper nodded, his hand resting on the compact pistol beneath his jacket. "Forcible entry or professional bypass?" "Professional. No visible damage to the locks or windows." Ellie led them to a cellar entrance concealed beneath a garden shed. Secondary access point. They probably missed this. The narrow passage led into a reinforced basement room that would have surprised anyone who knew Eleanor Reeves only as the mild-mannered art teacher. One wall held a locked cabinet containing 3 passports with different identities, stacks of various currencies, and a satellite phone still in factory wrapping. Another wall concealed a weapons cache behind a false panel. Nothing that would violate federal law, but considerably more firepower than most civilian households maintained. Ellie moved efficiently, retrieving a weatherproof go bag containing essential survival gear and a small fireproof case with documents. From the weapons cabinet, she selected a compact Glock 19 and spare magazines, securing them in a hidden holster designed for concealment. "Still travel light," Iron Bill observed approvingly. "Some lessons stick," Ellie replied, moving toward the stairs. "I need 2 more minutes upstairs." They proceeded cautiously to the main floor, alert for any sign of intruders. Ellie moved directly to her home office where student art projects waited for grading alongside lesson plans for the coming week. She quickly gathered a folder of teaching materials and a flash drive from her desk. "You really care about them," Iron Bill noted, watching as she carefully placed a note for her substitute teacher with detailed instructions for each student. "They're not just cover," Ellie said quietly. "They're real children who depend on me." She paused at a colorful drawing pinned to her bulletin board, a careful rendering of mountains and trees by Michael Evans. A quiet boy with remarkable artistic talent who struggled with social interactions. Below it, in careful handwriting, "For Ms. Reeves, thank you for believing in me." Something in her expression must have revealed her thoughts, because Iron Bill placed a weathered hand on her shoulder. "We'll make sure you get back to them, Ghost. That's a promise." As they prepared to leave, Ellie noticed a nearly imperceptible disturbance in the dust pattern on her bookshelf. Moving closer, she found a sophisticated listening device expertly hidden behind a row of art instruction books. "Russian make," she noted, examining it without touching. "Recent model, very expensive." "Shaw has serious backing," Iron Bill concluded grimly. "Which means we're racing against more than just a corrupt politician," Ellie added. "Foreign intelligence is involved. The stakes just got higher." "You saw him." The private jet soared above the clouds, carrying them westward toward Montana, as the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the landscape below. Inside the luxuriously appointed cabin, Senator Hayes had established a secure communications center, speaking in hushed tones with trusted staff in Washington, while her security detail maintained vigilant watch. Ellie sat apart from the others, methodically cleaning the Glock she'd retrieved from her home. The familiar ritual centered her thoughts, allowing her to process the dramatic shift in her reality. 24 hours earlier, she had been preparing an art lesson on color theory for third graders. Now she was flying across the country, pursued by assassins, her carefully constructed identity shattered. Marshall settled into the seat across from her, his weathered face etched with concern. "How are you holding up, Master Chief?" "Operational," she replied automatically, then caught herself. After 2 decades in civilian life, she'd nearly forgotten the terse language of active duty. "It's an adjustment, reactivating old patterns while trying to process the implications." Marshall nodded with understanding. "The transition is never easy in either direction. I remember when you first joined Sentinel Echo, youngest operator ever selected, first woman to qualify for the unit. Half the team thought it was a political stunt until they saw you on the range." "And the other half?" Ellie asked, allowing herself a small smile. "They were too smart to voice their doubts where Iron Bill could hear them." Marshall chuckled. "He'd spotted your talent early, said you had the rarest combination, steady hands and a steadier mind." The mention of her former mentor drew Ellie's gaze toward the front of the cabin, where Iron Bill sat reviewing satellite imagery of their destination with Hayes' aid. At 78, William Harrison remained a formidable presence, his body weathered by age and decades of hard service, but his mind still tactical, still lethal. "He never believed I was dead," Ellie said quietly. "All these years." "None of us who really knew you did," Marshall admitted. "The official story had too many inconsistencies. The closed casket ceremony at Arlington. the convenient explanation of catastrophic injuries during classified operations. But we had no proof, no way to determine what had really happened without exposing ourselves to the same threat. What changed, Ellie asked. Why now after 23 years? Marshall's expression darkened. 3 weeks ago, Thomas Cooper Whisper contacted me through back channels, said he had evidence that would bring down the entire rotten structure. Mentioned Berlin, 1989. The next day, his house in Montana was firebombed. Local authorities ruled it a propane explosion. Was he killed? Unknown. No body was recovered from the scene, which could mean either he escaped or was taken. Ellie absorbed this information with the analytical detachment that had made her an exceptional operative. So our only corroborating witness might be dead or captured, and the evidence he claimed to have could be destroyed. That's our working assumption, Marshall confirmed. But Cooper was always paranoid, even by operator standards. He would have maintained multiple copies of anything important stored in secure locations. If he survived, where would he go? Ellie asked. That's where Iron Bill comes in, Marshall explained. They served together in Vietnam, remained close. Bill knows Cooper's contingency protocols better than anyone. Their conversation was interrupted as Hayes approached her, expression grave. We have a problem. My office just received word that Raymond Shaw has moved up his campaign announcement. He's declaring his candidacy tomorrow morning instead of next month. He knows we're moving against him, Marshall concluded, accelerating his timeline to establish himself as a presidential candidate before we can expose him. Once he announces, any accusation we make will be portrayed as a political attack, Hayes added. The media will focus on the horse race rather than the evidence, and Shaw has powerful allies who will shield him from serious scrutiny. Ellie considered the implications. So we have less than 18 hours to find Cooper and secure his evidence before Shaw's announcement changes the playing field. Essentially, yes, Hayes confirmed. And there's more. My security team intercepted communications suggesting a Russian SVR team has been activated on American soil in a legal operation with no diplomatic cover. Professional assassins, Ellie translated. Shaw's calling in his foreign backers. Iron Bill joined them, spreading a topographical map across the table. Cooper has a backup location here. He indicated a remote area in the Bitterroot Mountains. Old hunting cabin purchased through layers of shell corporations. He called it his last resort option for when everything went sideways. Completely off-grid, Marshall noted, studying the location. No road access, minimal trails. Defensible. And nearly impossible to approach without being detected by someone with Cooper's training, Iron Bill added. If he's alive, that's where he'll be. Ellie studied the map, her mind calculating approach vectors and fields of fire. What's our insertion plan? We landed a private airstrip near Missoula, Hayes explained. From there, chartered helicopter to drop us at the nearest accessible clearing. Then approximately 6 miles on foot to the cabin location. Weather? Ellie asked. Clear tonight, but a storm system moving in tomorrow afternoon, Iron Bill reported. If we get delayed, extraction could become complicated. The plan was taking shape, but something still bothered Ellie. Senator, with respect, why are you personally involved in this operation? This level of field work isn't standard for a member of Congress. Hayes' expression hardened, revealing a glimpse of the naval intelligence officer she had once been. Because Raymond Shaw and I have history. In 1987, I was part of a counterintelligence team investigating security breaches in the nuclear program. We were getting close to identifying the source when suddenly our investigation was shut down, our evidence confiscated, and our team disbanded. 3 of my colleagues died in accidents within 6 months. The order to terminate our investigation came directly from Shaw's office. So this is personal, Ellie observed. It's both personal and a matter of national security, Hayes corrected. For 35 years, I've worked within the system, slowly gathering allies and information, waiting for an opportunity to expose Shaw and his network. You and Cooper represent my best chance, perhaps my only chance, to finally bring them to justice. The jet banked slightly as they began their descent toward Montana. Through the window, Ellie could see the rugged wilderness of the Bitterroot Range, its peaks still capped with the snow, even in late spring. Somewhere in those mountains, if he was still alive, Thomas Cooper was waiting with evidence that could change the course of American history. And hunting him were professionals who would stop at nothing to ensure that evidence never saw the light of day. The helicopter skimmed low over the dense pine forest, its rotors thundering in the pristine wilderness as they approached the designated landing zone, a small natural clearing 5 miles from Cooper's cabin. Ellie sat near the open door, dressed now in tactical gear provided from Hayes' resources. Dark clothing designed for woodland movement, lightweight body armor, and a communication headset linking her to the team. Iron Bill sat beside her, his weathered hands cradling a modern battle rifle, with the familiar comfort of a man reunited with an old friend. Despite his age, he projected the quiet competence that had made him legendary among special operators. Across from them, Marshall reviewed satellite imagery one final time, while Hayes consulted with her security detail about extraction protocols. LZ in sight, the pilot announced. Be advised I'm detecting unusual heat signatures approximately 2 miles northeast of our position. Could be campfires or equipment. Other people in the area, Hayes questioned. Unlikely, Iron Bill responded. This region is closed to hikers this time of year. Cooper would have chosen this location specifically because it's rarely visited. Advance team, Ellie concluded. They beat us here. The helicopter settled into the clearing, its skids pressing into the soft spring earth. I can hold position for 30 minutes, the pilot informed them. After that, fuel considerations require me to return to base. We'll need extract at the secondary LZ tomorrow at 0600, Hayes instructed. Weather permitting. Understood, ma'am. Good luck. They deplaned in practiced order, establishing a perimeter around the landing zone before the helicopter lifted off its downwash, bending the surrounding pines as it climbed back into the darkening sky. As the sound of rotors faded, the profound silence of the wilderness enveloped them, a silence Ellie had not experienced since her operational days. We move in two-person teams, Marshall outlined, checking his equipment one final time. Hayes and I will approach from the south. Ghost and Iron Bill from the east. Maintain communications blackout unless absolutely necessary. If Cooper is following protocol, he'll have motion sensors and other detection measures in place. He'll also have recognition signals, Iron Bill added, removing a small metallic object from his pocket, a Vietnam-era Zippo lighter with distinctive engravings. This was our verification method during joint operations. He sees this, he knows we're friendly. Darkness was falling rapidly as the team separated, moving into the dense forest along their designated routes. Ellie and Iron Bill advanced in silence, their movements fluid and coordinated, despite never having operated together in the field. Some partnerships transcended time and absence. The bond between master sniper and prize student was one such connection. They covered the first 3 miles without incident, moving efficiently through the rugged terrain. Ellie found her body remembering patterns of movement she hadn't used in decades. The precise foot placement that minimized sound, the rhythmic breathing that supported sustained exertion, the constant environmental awareness that had once kept her alive in hostile territory. Iron Bill paused suddenly, raising a closed fist in the universal signal to stop. Ellie froze instantly, her senses heightened as she scanned their surroundings for whatever had triggered his warning. The old sniper pointed silently to a nearly invisible filament stretching across their path, a tripwire connected to what appeared to be a non-lethal alarm system. Cooper's outer perimeter, he whispered. We're getting close. They carefully bypassed the sensor, noting several others placed strategically along likely approach routes. Cooper's paranoia had served him well. The defenses were expertly concealed, detectable only to those with specialized training. As they approached within a mile of the cabin's location, Iron Bill paused again this time, kneeling to examine disturbances in the forest floor. Multiple boot prints, he observed quietly. Military-style treads, consistent pattern. 4, maybe 5 individuals moving in tactical formation. Recent, Ellie asked, though she already suspected the answer. Very, within the last few hours. Iron Bill's weathered face betrayed concern. They're ahead of us. The implications were clear. If Shaw's team had already reached Cooper, they might be too late. Ellie made a swift decision, gesturing toward higher ground to their right. We need to confirm the situation before proceeding. There's a ridgeline that should provide sight lines to the cabin. They diverted from their planned route, climbing swiftly up the steep, pine-covered slope until they reached a position overlooking the small valley where Cooper's cabin was located. Ellie removed compact binoculars from her pack, scanning the area below with methodical precision. The cabin itself was partially visible through the trees, a small, well-maintained structure built of local timber, positioned with clear fields of fire in all directions. No light showed in the windows, but Ellie detected the faint signature of a recently extinguished chimney fire. More concerning were the tactical positions established around the cabin's perimeter, at least 4 armed individuals in concealed locations maintaining surveillance on the structure. Professional setup, Iron Bill noted, observing through his own optics. Not local law enforcement or private contractors. Those are foreign operators, you can tell by their positioning and equipment. Russian SVR most likely, Ellie agreed. The question is whether Cooper is still inside. As if in answer, a brief flash of light appeared in one of the cabin's windows. 3 short pulses followed by 2 longer ones. A signal. Cooper's alive, Iron Bill whispered, a rare smile crossing his weathered face. That's our old distress code from Nam. 3-2 pattern means surrounded but operational. He knows they're out there, Ellie concluded. Probably spotted them during their approach. So what's his play? Iron Bill wondered. Why not bug out before they establish containment? The answer came as Cooper flashed another series of signals, 4 short, 1 long, 3 short. He secured something in the cabin, Iron Bill translated, something he won't abandon. The evidence, Ellie realized. He's protecting the evidence we came for. A new complication emerged as Ellie detected movement in the trees, approximately half a mile to their west. Marshall and Hayes approaching along their planned route, unaware of the ambush awaiting them. They're heading into a trap, she whispered urgently. We need to warn them. Iron Bill considered their options. Radio would alert the hostiles. Visual signals might do the same. Ellie made a swift decision, removing the compact Glock from its holster. Create a diversion. Draw their attention to us rather than Marshall's approach. Just like Kandahar, Iron Bill nodded with approval. I'll move to that outcropping for a better firing position. Wait for my signal. The old sniper disappeared into the underbrush with remarkable stealth for a man his age, positioning himself among a cluster of boulders approximately 50 yards to Ellie's right. 3 minutes later, a bird call, perfectly mimicked but out of place for this region, signaled his readiness. Ellie aimed at a dead tree near the closest hostile position and fired 2 rounds in rapid succession. The sharp reports echoed through the valley, instantly alerting the surveillance team. As expected, their attention and weapons immediately oriented toward the source of the gunfire. The diversion worked. Through her binoculars, Ellie saw Marshall halt his advance, immediately recognizing the tactical situation. He directed Hayes to cover while establishing a defensive position behind a fallen log. They had avoided walking into the ambush, but the cost was significant. Ellie and Iron Bill had revealed their position. Already 2 of the hostiles were moving toward their location, advancing with the practiced efficiency of experienced operators. We got company, Iron Bill commented calmly through their communication link. 2 tangos moving upslope, attempting to flank our position. I count 2 more maintaining position near the cabin, Ellie responded, plus unknown numbers potentially inside. Just like the old days, Iron Bill remarked, and Ellie could hear the grim smile in his voice. Outnumbered in hostile territory. With the advantage of high ground and superior training, Ellie added, falling easily into the rapport they had established decades earlier. I'll take the one on the left flank, Iron Bill decided. You address the right approach. Confirmed. Ellie moved silently through the underbrush, positioning herself to intercept the operator approaching from their right. Through gaps in the foliage, she caught glimpses of her target, a man in his 30s, moving with the confident precision of someone with formal military training. His weapon, a suppressed automatic rifle, suggested lethal intent. She circled behind him, using the terrain to mask her approach, closing to within 15 feet before he detected her presence. As he turned, she was already in motion, closing the distance with explosive speed, redirecting his weapon before he could bring it to bear. Her first strike targeted his brachial nerve cluster, temporarily numbing his shooting arm. The second, delivered with precision to his solar plexus, drove the air from his lungs. The man was good, professionally trained in close-quarters combat. Despite the initial disadvantage, he recovered quickly, countering with a knife drawn from a sheath at his belt. The blade sliced through the air, inches from Ellie's face, as she pivoted away, evaluating her opponent with cold efficiency. 23 years as an art teacher hadn't erased the combat instincts honed through thousands of hours of training. Ellie's body remembered patterns of movement that her conscious mind had filed away, the precise timing of blocks and strikes, the exploitation of anatomical vulnerabilities, the economy of motion that defined elite close-quarters specialists. The engagement lasted less than 30 seconds. When it ended, the operative lay unconscious, his weapons secured, his communications equipment disabled. Ellie had chosen not to kill, a decision reflecting both tactical considerations and her own evolution. Ghost Echo had been trained to eliminate threats. Eleanor Reeves had spent 2 decades nurturing young lives. Both aspects of her identity informed her actions now. 100 yards away, a single suppressed shot indicated Iron Bill had addressed the second threat with his characteristic efficiency. Through their communication link, Tango neutralized, non-lethal. Same here, Ellie confirmed. Status of the cabin team? Still in position, they sent the two best to investigate our diversion, kept their perimeter secure. Professional discipline, Ellie noted with reluctant respect. Marshall, holding position, awaiting our signal. The tactical situation had evolved but remained precarious. They had neutralized two of the hostiles but alerted the others to their presence. Cooper remained trapped inside the cabin, surrounded by at least two additional operators with unknown capabilities and intentions. We need direct communication with Cooper, Ellie decided. Confirm his status and develop an extraction plan. Iron Bill rejoined her, moving silently through the underbrush. Despite his age, his breathing remained controlled, his movements precise. Cooper will have a communication protocol established, something old school that these youngsters wouldn't monitor. Suggestions. The old sniper removed a small signal mirror from his pack, positioning it to catch the last rays of the setting sun. With precise movements, he flashed a pattern toward one of the cabin windows, Morse code, a system largely abandoned by modern military forces, but familiar to veterans of their era. COOPER, STATUS. They waited, watching intently for any response from the cabin. For nearly a minute, nothing happened. Then from a different window than before came an answering flash. FOURHOSTILE, TWODOWN, EVIDENCESECURE, EXTRACT2300. Four hostiles, Iron Bill translated. Two down, evidence secure, extraction at 2300 hours. Two down, Ellie questioned. We neutralized two outside. He's taken care of two inside, Iron Bill concluded with grim approval. Still the same old Cooper. That leaves at least two more unaccounted for, Ellie calculated. Possibly more if they have reinforcements in the area. Iron Bill checked his watch. 2300 gives us 4 hours to secure the area and establish an extraction route. Tight timeline. And explains why Cooper's been holding position, Ellie added. He's waiting for full darkness before attempting to move the evidence out. They established communication with Marshall, coordinating a plan to secure the extraction. The situation remained delicate. They were still outnumbered in unfamiliar territory with limited resources and a critical mission objective. But for the first time since learning of Shaw's betrayal, they had a clear path forward. As darkness settled fully over the Montana wilderness, Ellie found herself reflecting on the strange journey that had brought her back to operational status after 23 years of civilian life. That morning, she had been Eleanor Reeves, preparing to teach color theory to third graders. Now she was Ghost Echo, again coordinating a tactical extraction against hostile foreign operatives on American soil. Both identities were real. Both represented aspects of herself she could no longer deny or separate. The challenge ahead would require the best elements of both the lethal precision of Ghost Echo and the patient compassion of Eleanor Reeves. Iron Bill seemed to sense her thoughts. Different worlds, he said quietly. Hard to reconcile sometimes. Yes, she agreed, but necessary. The old sniper nodded. That's why you were always the best of us, Ghost. You never lost your humanity even when the mission required you to set it aside temporarily. Before she could respond, their communication link activated with Marshall's voice. Movement at the north perimeter. Vehicle approaching on the old logging road. Reinforcements. Through her binoculars, Ellie could make out the distant headlights of a vehicle moving slowly along the barely visible track that served as the area's only road access. The tactical situation was deteriorating rapidly. Change of plans, she decided. We need to extract Cooper immediately before they establish a complete cordon. Agreed, Iron Bill responded. I'll coordinate with Marshall to create a diversion on the north side. You establish direct contact with Cooper. As Iron Bill moved out, Ellie studied the cabin and its surroundings one final time, calculating approach angles and fields of fire. The two remaining hostiles maintained disciplined surveillance positions, their attention now split between the cabin and the direction of the earlier disturbance. Ellie descended the slope using natural features for concealment, moving with a silent efficiency that had once earned her the call sign Ghost. Within 15 minutes, she had navigated to within 30 yards of the cabin's rear entrance, without detection, a testament to skills that decades of disuse had not diminished. From this position, she could see one of the hostiles, clearly a woman in her 30s, with the hard eyes and controlled movements of a professional killer. Her equipment and positioning suggested Spetsnaz training, likely SVR's elite direct action team. The second hostile remained partially concealed behind a stand of pines to the cabin's west side, visible only as an occasional shadow moving between trees. Ellie waited, controlling her breathing, as she watched for the opportunity Iron Bill would create. At precisely 2130 hours, a series of muffled explosions erupted from the north perimeter, Iron Bill's diversion using improvised devices created from materials in his ever-present go bag. As expected, the hostile operators immediately oriented toward the disturbance, communicating urgently through their tactical headsets. The female operative moved forward to investigate, leaving her position momentarily unguarded. Ellie seized the opportunity, covering the remaining distance to the cabin in a controlled sprint, reaching the rear entrance without detection. 3 light taps on the door, a pattern established decades earlier for covert operations, signaled her presence to the occupant. The door opened, fractionally revealing a narrow slice of the interior darkness. "Iron Bill said you were dead," came a gruff whisper from within. "Rumors of my demise were greatly exaggerated." Ellie responded with the countersign they had established during their final joint operation. The door opened wider, revealing Thomas Cooper, 68 years old, but still carrying the hard-edged presence that had made him one of Sentinel Echo's most effective operators. His face bore fresh bruising, and he favored his left leg as he stepped back to admit her, but his eyes remained alert and focused. "Ghost Echo," he acknowledged with a slight nod. "Been a while." 23 years, 2 months, and 14 days, Ellie confirmed quickly, scanning the cabin's interior. 2 bodies lay neatly arranged in the corner, covered with a tarp the hostiles Cooper had addressed earlier. But who's counting? Despite the grim circumstances, Cooper's weathered face creased in a brief smile. "Still the same ghost, precise to a fault." "Status report," Ellie prompted, moving away from the windows as she conducted a tactical assessment of their position. 2 tangos neutralized inside, Cooper reported tersely. 2 more maintaining exterior surveillance. Unknown number approaching from the north access road. Evidence secure. He indicated a weatherproof case resting on the cabin's small table. Everything needed to bring down Shaw and his entire operation. Details. Full documentation of the Berlin operation. Surveillance photos showing Shaw with Baranov. Financial records tracking payments from Soviet accounts to Shaw's offshore holdings. And this, Cooper removed a small recording device from his pocket. Audio of Shaw discussing the elimination of Sentinel Echo personnel to cover his tracks, recorded during a private meeting at the Pentagon in 1990. "How did you get this?" Ellie asked, impressed despite the urgent circumstances. "I never trusted the brass," Cooper said simply. "After Vietnam, I learned to keep my own insurance policies. Been collecting evidence on Shaw since I first suspected something was off about the Berlin operation." "We need to move now," Ellie decided, checking her watch. "Iron Bill's diversion won't distract them for long." Cooper nodded, retrieving a well-worn rucksack into which he carefully placed the evidence case. "Extraction plan. Hayes has a helicopter scheduled for 0600 at the secondary LZ," Ellie explained. "But with reinforcements arriving, we need to create distance before they establish a complete cordon." "There's a ranger station 8 miles southwest," Cooper suggested. "Unoccupied this time of year. Good defensive position if we need to hold until morning." "Doable with your leg?" Ellie asked, noting his injury. Cooper's expression hardened. "I've humped farther with worse. Let's move." They exited through a concealed trapdoor beneath the cabin, accessing a narrow tunnel that Cooper had constructed as an emergency egress, another product of his lifelong paranoia that now proved prescient. The passage emerged 50 yards from the structure, hidden behind a natural rock formation that provided immediate cover. From this position, they could see that Iron Bill's diversion had created the intended confusion. The hostile operators had split their focus, with at least 2 investigating the northern perimeter, while others maintained surveillance on the cabin. So far, none had detected the tunnel exit. Ellie activated her communication link, keeping her voice barely above a whisper. "Package secure. Proceeding to alternate extraction point via Southwest Road." Marshall's voice returned, equally quiet. "Understood. We'll rendezvous at checkpoint 2. Be advised, vehicle contained at least 4 additional hostiles. They're establishing blocking positions along primary routes." "Roger that. Maintaining communications blackout until checkpoint 2. With Cooper leading the way, they began their extraction, moving through the dense forest with the practiced stealth of seasoned operators. Despite his age and injury, Cooper navigated the difficult terrain with remarkable efficiency, selecting routes that maximized concealment while maintaining a sustainable pace. Behind them, raised voices and increased activity around the cabin indicated the hostiles had discovered their escape. The hunters were now becoming the hunted, but Ghost Echo and Whisper had decades of experience evading pursuit in environments far more challenging than the Montana wilderness. As they disappeared into the deeper forest, Ellie found herself experiencing an unexpected sensation alongside the tactical focus and controlled adrenaline of operational status. She felt something she hadn't experienced in 23 years. Purpose. Ghost Echo was back in the field and executing the mission she had been trained for, protecting American security against threats both foreign and domestic. The evidence in Cooper's rucksack represented their chance to expose a decades-long betrayal that had cost dozens of American lives and compromised national security at the highest levels. Just like old times, Cooper remarked quietly as they paused briefly to verify their heading. With considerably more joint pain, Ellie responded dryly. Cooper's weathered face creased in a rare smile. Aging isn't for the faint-hearted, but neither was Sentinel Echo. They continued their extraction, moving deeper into the wilderness as full darkness enveloped the Montana landscape. Somewhere behind them, professional killers were following their trail. Ahead lay an uncertain rendezvous, in a desperate race to expose the truth before Shaw's presidential announcement changed the political calculus forever. For Eleanor Reeves' art teacher, the situation would have been unimaginable. For Ghost Echo Master Operative, it was simply another mission, albeit one with the highest possible stakes. Both aspects of her identity moved in perfect harmony through the moonlit forest, each step carrying her further from the peaceful life she had built and closer to the reckoning that duty demanded. Dawn broke over the Montana wilderness, pale light filtering through ancient pines, as Ellie maintained watch from the ranger station's observation deck. The small outpost positioned on a rocky outcropping with commanding views of the surrounding valleys had provided them temporary sanctuary through the night. Behind her, Cooper and Iron Bill monitored radio transmissions, while Marshall and Hayes established secure communications with Washington. Their escape from this cabin had not been clean. Twice during the night, SVR search teams had come within 100 yards of their position, forcing them to freeze in absolute stillness until the danger passed. Cooper's leg wound had worsened during the journey, requiring field treatment upon arrival. Despite these challenges, they had reached the ranger station intact with the evidence secure. Sunrise brings complications, Iron Bill noted, joining Ellie on the observation deck. Better visibility for them, but for us too. Ellie nodded, scanning the forest below through high-powered binoculars. They've established a search grid, professional approach working outward from the cabin, 4 teams of 2 maintaining communication intervals. Old-school KGB playbook, Iron Bill agreed, when hunting ghosts blanket the forest. How's Cooper? Ellie asked, not lowering the binoculars. Stubborn as ever, refuses pain medication, says it clouds his thinking. Leg's not great, but he'll make the extraction point. And the evidence? Legitimate. Hayes' cryptography specialist confirmed the authentication codes on the digital files. The audio recording of Shaw is being verified against voice pattern analysis, but Cooper's documentation is meticulous. Chain of custody established for every piece. The man may be paranoid, but he's thorough. The knowledge that their mission had secured actionable evidence against Shaw provided some comfort, but Ellie remained focused on the immediate tactical situation. 8 professional operatives were searching for them, with helicopter extraction still hours away. The odds weren't favorable. We need to thin their numbers before attempting extraction, she decided. Even with our experience 8 to 5 aren't at odds I like when facing SVR operators. Iron Bill nodded with grim approval. Agreed. Suggestions. Divide their attention, create multiple points of interest to fragment their search pattern. The plan took shape quickly. Using an equipment from the ranger station and their own tactical gear, they established a series of controlled diversions at strategic points surrounding their position, small incendiary devices that would create smoke but minimal fire risk, timed to activate at 30-minute intervals in a pattern suggesting movement away from their actual location. Marshall joined their planning session, bringing additional intelligence. Hayes' contact at the Bureau confirms Shaw has accelerated his announcement. Press conference scheduled for 1100 Eastern, that's 0900 our time. Once he declares his candidacy, the political shields go up. That gives us less than 4 hours to get this evidence to a secure transmission point, Ellie calculated. The helicopter isn't due until 0600. There's a Forest Service communications relay station 3 miles northwest. Cooper contributed, limping to join them despite his injury. Hardened facility with satellite uplink capabilities. If we can reach it, Hayes can transmit the evidence directly to her secure servers in Washington. And if we encounter resistance, Marshall asked. Cooper's weathered face hardened. Then we overcome it. I didn't safeguard this evidence for 23 years to lose it in the final hours. Their planning was interrupted as one of Hayes' security detail alerted them to movement in the valley below, a vehicle approaching on the access road leading to the ranger station. Government plates, the agent reported. Forest Service markings, but the driving pattern is tactical. Slow approach, irregular intervals. They've appropriated local resources, Marshall concluded. Standard SVR protocol when operating on foreign soil blend with indigenous authorities. Ellie made a swift assessment. We need to move now. The first diversion is set to trigger in 7 minutes. That's our window to break contact and move toward the relay station. They gathered their equipment with practiced efficiency, weapons, checked communications, secured the precious evidence stowed in Cooper's reinforced pack. Hayes' security detail would remain with her, establishing a defensible position at the ranger station, while the operators moved the evidence to the transmission point. Senator, if we're not back in 90 minutes, proceed with extraction and get word to your people in Washington, Marshall instructed. The evidence is what matters. Hayes nodded, her expression revealing the naval intelligence officer beneath the political exterior. Good hunting. And remember, Shaw goes live at 1100 Eastern. After that, the narrative changes. The four operators moved out through the station's rear exit, using the dense forest as concealment as they descended the ridge. Ellie took point with Cooper protected in the center of their formation despite his protests. Iron Bill and Marshall secured their flanks, maintaining tactical spacing as they navigated the difficult terrain. Their timing proved fortunate. As they cleared the first half-mile, the initial diversion activated a controlled smoke release that immediately drew the attention of the search teams. Through breaks in the forest canopy, Ellie could see the false Forest Service vehicle changing direction, moving toward the distraction. First diversion effective, she reported quietly, maintaining current heading. They proceeded northwest using natural features for concealment while maintaining a sustainable pace to accommodate Cooper's injury. The second and third diversions activated as planned, further fragmenting the search pattern of the SVR teams. For 23 minutes, they moved without incident, covering nearly 2 miles of challenging terrain. Then Iron Bill froze, raising a closed fist to halt their advance. Contact West Ridge, he whispered. 2 operators moving parallel to our position, 400 yards out. Ellie studied the distant figures through her binoculars. They haven't spotted us yet, maintaining routine search pattern. Options, Marshall prompted. Continue current heading but adjust depth, Ellie decided. Move deeper into the ravine for better concealment. They altered their route, descending into a steep-sided draw where a small stream provided both cover and a natural path forward. The detour would add time to their journey but reduce the risk of detection. Cooper winced as the descent aggravated his injured leg, but he maintained pace without complaint. Their progress slowed as the terrain grew more challenging. Slick rocks, fallen timber, and patches of early spring snow creating natural obstacles. Despite these difficulties, they maintained their tactical discipline, moving with the coordinated efficiency of experienced operators. Relay station should be visible once we clear this ridgeline, Cooper informed them as they began ascending the far side of the ravine. Concrete structure with a satellite array. Minimal staffing this time of year, typically automated with weekly maintenance checks. As they approached the crest, Ellie moved ahead to establish a visual on their objective. Reaching a position with clear sightlines, she observed the relay station approximately half a mile ahead, a utilitarian concrete building surrounded by a chain-link fence with a substantial satellite dish mounted on the roof. What concerned her were the 2 vehicles parked outside, nondescript SUVs with rental plates positioned for quick departure. No Forest Service markings, no official presence. Station appears compromised, she reported, returning to the group. 2 vehicles likely hostile, no visible personnel, which suggests they're inside or establishing perimeter positions. They anticipated our move, Marshall concluded grimly. Someone knows operational protocols too well. Shaw has resources in intelligence services, Cooper reminded them. He's had decades to place loyal assets in key positions. Iron Bill studied the surrounding terrain with the practiced eye of a master sniper. Ridge to the east offers overwatch position. I could provide cover while you 3 approach from different vectors. Negative, Ellie countered. We stay together? Alternative approach from the maintenance access at the rear. Less exposed, better angles if we encounter resistance. The plan adjusted, they circled wide to approach the station from its blind side using a maintenance road partially overgrown from winter disuse. Cooper provided details from memory access codes, interior layout, potential choke points. His decades of paranoid preparation were proving invaluable. As they closed to within 100 yards of the perimeter fence, Iron Bill suddenly raised his hand, signaling for absolute stillness. His head tilted slightly, the motion almost imperceptible listening. Aircraft, he whispered. Helicopter approaching from the east. Not our extraction. Seconds later, they all heard it, the distinctive thrum of rotor blades growing steadily louder. Through gaps in the forest canopy, Ellie caught glimpses of a black helicopter, moving low over the trees, its profile military rather than civilian. No markings, Marshall observed. Not government, not commercial. Private military contractors, Cooper suggested. Shaw has connections with several firms. The helicopter circled once, then settled onto a small clearing beside the relay station. 4 men emerged, combat gear, tactical movement, professional bearing. They entered the station without hesitation, clearly coordinating with personnel already inside. Situation deteriorating, Ellie assessed calmly. Direct approach no longer viable. Cooper checked his watch. Shaw goes live in 57 minutes. We're running out of options. For 23 years, Ellie had lived as Eleanor Reeves' art teacher. She had cultivated patience, developed an eye for creative solutions, learned to approach problems from unexpected angles. Now those skills merged with Ghost Echo's tactical expertise. The transmission doesn't require physical access to the equipment, she realized. Just proximity to the satellite uplink. Marshall caught her meaning immediately. The dish on the roof. If we can patch into the feed. Cooper, your pack contains a portable uplink, correct? Ellie asked. The old operative nodded. Standard insurance policy, limited bandwidth, but sufficient for compressed data transmission. We need elevation and line of sight to the satellite. Ellie continued studying the surrounding terrain. The ridge to the northwest should provide both. The plan crystallized rapidly. They would bypass the compromised relay station entirely, instead ascending to a position where Cooper's portable equipment could establish direct connection with the same satellite. Hayes' security codes would then allow transmission of the evidence directly to her secure servers in Washington. Time was now their primary adversary. The ridge was nearly a mile away, requiring them to move quickly across exposed terrain while evading both ground teams and potential aerial surveillance from the helicopter. I'll create a diversion. Iron Bill volunteered. Draw their attention to the south while you 3 make for the ridge. Negative, Ellie responded firmly. We established that we stayed together. Ghost, the old sniper said quietly, using her operational call sign. Some missions require sacrifice. You know that better than anyone. Before she could object further, Cooper intervened. Bill's right. Tactical necessity. 3 moving targets are harder to conceal than 1, and time is critical. Marshall nodded reluctant agreement. Iron Bill has the experience to evade pursuit, and we need to get this evidence transmitted before Shaw's announcement changes the political landscape. Ellie recognized the strategic logic, but found herself unexpectedly resistant to separating their team. The Master Chief who had commanded Sentinel Echo would have made the decision without hesitation. Eleanor Reeves, who had spent 23 years building connections with students and colleagues, felt the human cost more acutely. 30 minutes, she conceded finally. Create your diversion, then proceed to extraction point, Charlie. We'll rendezvous there after transmission. Iron Bill's weathered face creased in a rare smile. Just like Karbala. You worry too much, Ghost. Someone has to, she replied, the familiar exchange echoing across decades of joint operations. They separated with minimal ceremony, professionals focused on mission objectives rather than personal concerns. Iron Bill moved south carrying sufficient equipment to create a convincing distraction, while Ellie led Marshall and Cooper toward the northwestern ridge. 22 minutes later, as they ascended the steep slope toward their transmission position, multiple explosions erupted near the relay station. Even at this distance, they could see vehicles repositioning, personnel emerging from the building, attention focusing on the southern perimeter, where Iron Bill had staged his diversion. Effective as always, Marshall commented as they reached the ridgeline. Cooper immediately began assembling his equipment, a compact satellite uplink system connected to a ruggedized laptop containing the evidence. His fingers moved with practiced efficiency despite his age, entering encryption codes and establishing connection protocols. Uplink established, he reported after several tense minutes. Transmitting authentication to Hayes' secure server now. Ellie maintained security, scanning their surroundings with methodical precision while the transmission proceeded. The helicopter remained grounded at the relay station, but several teams had deployed to investigate Iron Bill's diversion. Their position remained secure for the moment, but that could change rapidly. Authentication confirmed, Cooper continued, beginning evidence transmission. Estimated completion time, 14 minutes. Shaw goes live in 22, Marshall noted, checking his watch. It's going to be close. Ellie's attention shifted to movement on the southern ridge. a lone figure moving with tactical discipline through the forest pursued by at least two operatives. Even at this distance, she recognized Iron Bill's distinctive movement pattern. Bill's drawing them away from the station, she observed, but he's got at least two in pursuit. Marshall studied the situation through binoculars. He'll lose them in the ravine. He knows this terrain better than they do. Transmission at 40%, Cooper reported. Connection stable. The next 7 minutes passed in tense silence, each operator focused on their assigned responsibility. Cooper monitoring the transmission, Marshall maintaining communication with Hayes Ellie securing their perimeter. The evidence transfer proceeded steadily, the compressed files containing 2 decades of meticulously gathered intelligence flowing through the satellite connection to Washington. Transmission at 87%, Cooper updated. 9 minutes to Shaw's announcement. Ellie's attention remained fixed on Iron Bill's last known position. The pursuit had disappeared into the ravine, as Marshall predicted, but she had expected to see the old sniper emerge on the far side by now. His absence created a growing sense of unease. "Something's wrong," she said finally. "Bill should have cleared the ravine by now." Marshall studied the area through his binoculars. No visual. Could be maintaining cover until pursuit passes. Or he could be in trouble. Ellie countered, making a decision. "I'm going to verify his status. You two complete the transmission and proceed to the extraction point." "Ghost," Marshall objected. "Mission protocol dictates." "I'm well aware of protocol, Colonel." She interrupted, her tone leaving no room for debate. "Complete the transmission." "That's an order." Without waiting for further discussion, Ellie descended the ridge, moving with the fluid efficiency that had earned her reputation as Sentinel Echo's most effective operative. 23 years as an art teacher hadn't diminished her ability to navigate difficult terrain at speed, using natural features for concealment while maintaining tactical awareness. She reached the ravine in 11 minutes, immediately identifying signs of recent passage, disturbed vegetation, displaced rocks, the faint impression of tactical boots and patches of soft earth. Following the trail, she moved deeper into the shadowed gulch, where the spring runoff had created a small stream cascading over moss-covered stones. The first indication of trouble came in the form of spent shell casings, 9mm, scattered across a small clearing where the ravine widened slightly. Signs of a firefight, including bullet impacts on surrounding trees. She proceeded with increased caution, weapon-ready senses heightened. 50 yards further, she found Iron Bill. The old sniper sat with his back against a boulder, his rifle across his knees, a crimson stain spreading across his chest despite the field dressing he had applied. His breathing was labored but controlled, his eyes alert despite the pain evident in his expression. "Took you long enough, Ghost," he greeted her, his voice weaker than usual but still carrying his characteristic dry humor. Ellie knelt beside him, professionally assessing his injuries while maintaining perimeter awareness. "Situation report, Master Sergeant." "2 tangos neutralized," he responded automatically, falling into the familiar pattern of operational communications. "Caught around during the exchange, not immediately fatal, but not exactly a flesh wound either." Ellie adjusted his dressing, applying proper pressure to slow the bleeding. "Medical assessment. Through and through, upper right torso, probable lung involvement. Managed to patch it well enough to avoid before immediate exsanguination, but field surgery would be appreciated when convenient." Despite the gravity of the situation, Ellie found herself smiling at his understated gallows humor, a hallmark of their operational relationship decades earlier. "Extraction plan. Was working on that when you arrived," Iron Bill admitted. "Mobility's somewhat compromised at present." Ellie checked her watch. Cooper's transmission should be complete. Shaw goes live in 4 minutes. "Did we get him?" Iron Bill asked, his eyes suddenly intense despite his weakened state. "Evidence is transmitted. Hayes will ensure it reaches the right channels." The old sniper nodded with satisfaction. "Worth it then." Ellie activated her communication link. "Echo to actual, located Ironside. Medical situation requires assistance for extraction. Position is Ravine Delta, approximately 1 click southeast of transmission point." Marshall's voice returned immediately. "Understood. Transmission complete. Proceeding to your location. ETA 12 minutes. "Make it 10, Ellie responded. "Situation time sensitive." She returned her attention to Iron Bill, noting with professional concern that his color was deteriorating. The wound was more serious than he had admitted, typical of the old warrior who had always minimized his own injuries while insisting others receive proper medical attention. "Stay with me, Bill," she urged, administering a morphine injector from her medical kit. "No checking out after all this trouble." "Wouldn't dream of it," he replied, his voice growing fainter. Still need to see Shaw's face when it all comes crashing down. Ellie maintained both tactical security and medical support, simultaneously monitoring their surroundings while keeping Iron Bill stable. His training and natural toughness were working in his favor, but field medicine had its limitations. They needed to reach proper medical care within hours, not days. Marshall and Cooper arrived in 9 minutes, beating their estimated arrival time despite Cooper's injury. Together, they constructed an improvised stretcher using materials from their packs and branches from the surrounding forest. Helicopter extraction in 22 minutes, Marshall reported. Hayes has secured landing coordinates at a clearing half a mile northeast. We need to move now. They began the difficult process of transporting Iron Bill through the challenging terrain, each operator taking turns supporting the stretcher, while the others maintained security. Cooper, despite his own injury, refused to be exempted from the rotation, sharing the burden equally. Just like Mogadishu, Iron Bill commented during a brief rest, his voice barely audible. Except I was carrying your sorry hide that time, Ghost. I recall it differently. Ellie responded, playing along with his attempt to maintain morale. Something about you tripping over your own bootlace and requiring rescue by a junior operator. History is written by the victors. Iron Bill quipped, his weathered face managing a ghost of his trademark smile despite the pain. They reached the extraction point with 4 minutes to spare, establishing a defensive perimeter while awaiting the helicopter. Cooper managed to establish communications with Hayes, confirming that the evidence transmission had been successful. The files were already being analyzed by trusted experts in Washington, with preliminary confirmation of their authenticity. Shaw's press conference began on schedule, Cooper reported. But Hayes says the networks are about to cut away for breaking news. Justice Department is moving. Iron Bill's eyes, which had been drifting closed from exhaustion and blood loss, opened at this information. We did it. We did it, Ellie confirmed, kneeling beside her mentor. The truth is out. Shaw's finished. The approaching sound of helicopter rotors interrupted any further conversation. The extraction aircraft appeared over the tree line, a civilian model rather than military, but piloted with obvious professional skill as it settled into the small clearing. They loaded Iron Bill first, securing him carefully in the aircraft's limited medical facility. Cooper followed, then Marshall, with Ellie maintaining security until all were aboard. As she finally climbed into the helicopter, a burst of automatic weapons fire erupted from the forest edge. The remaining SVR team had located their position. Go! Ellie shouted to the pilot, returning fire to suppress the attack as the helicopter lifted off. Bullets pinged against the aircraft's underside, but none penetrated the passenger compartment as they gained altitude and speed, quickly leaving the firefight behind. Within minutes, they were flying southwest toward Missoula, where a medical team awaited to provide proper treatment for Iron Bill. In the relative safety of the aircraft, Ellie finally allowed herself a moment to process the events of the past 36 hours. Her carefully constructed life as Eleanor Reeves had been irrevocably altered. Ghost Echo had emerged from retirement, executed a critical mission, and secured evidence that would expose decades of treachery at the highest levels of government. Cooper passed her a satellite phone. Hayes wants to speak with you. Master Chief? The senator's voice came through clearly, despite the helicopter's noise. Mission accomplished. Shaw's press conference was interrupted by federal agents 15 minutes ago. He's in custody along with 3 members of his inner circle. The evidence you secured is irrefutable. Casualties? Ellie asked automatically, her operational mindset still dominant. None on our side beyond the injuries you're aware of. Several of Shaw's security detail resisted arrest, 2 wounded, none fatal. The Russian operatives are being hunted by joint FBI Homeland Security teams. And the broader conspiracy, the trust. We're moving on multiple fronts simultaneously, Hayes confirmed. Search warrants being executed at 17 locations across 6 states. Financial accounts frozen. This goes beyond Shaw. Your evidence exposed an entire network. Good, Ellie said simply. There's something else, Hayes continued. The president has been briefed on your role in this operation. He's authorized me to offer you a choice: continued deep cover with a new identity and location, or official reinstatement with full restoration of rank and benefits. The offer caught Ellie by surprise. For 23 years, she had lived as Eleanor Reeves, building a life that had become more than just a cover identity. Her students, her colleagues, the community she had joined, all were real connections that mattered to her. Yet Ghost Echo had never truly disappeared, merely gone dormant until needed again. I need time to consider the options, she responded finally. Of course, Hayes acknowledged, but there's one more thing you should know. The school board in Bedford received an anonymous donation this morning, $5 million for their arts program, specifically earmarked for continuing the work of Eleanor Reeves. Whatever you decide about your future, your legacy there is secure. Ellie felt an unexpected tightness in her throat, emotion breaking through the operational discipline she had maintained throughout the mission. Thank you, Senator. No, Master Chief. Thank you. Your country owes you a debt it can never fully repay. The call ended, leaving Ellie with her thoughts as the helicopter continued toward Missoula. Beside her, Iron Bill rested under Marshall's watchful care, his condition stabilized but still serious. Cooper sat opposite, his weathered face revealing exhaustion, but also profound satisfaction. What will you do now, Ghost? He asked quietly. She considered the question carefully. First, ensure Bill receives proper medical care. Then, she paused, genuinely uncertain about the path forward. You could come to Montana, Cooper suggested. Plenty of room at my place. Good sight lines, defensible position, no nosy neighbors. Plus the local school needs an art teacher. The offer was tempting proximity to trusted colleagues who understood both her past and her capabilities. But Bedford had become home in ways she hadn't fully appreciated until faced with leaving it behind. I'll consider it, she promised. But there are students waiting for me in Virginia, children who need the stability of having their teacher return. Cooper nodded with understanding. The mission never really ends, does it just changes form? Something like that, Ellie agreed. The helicopter began its descent toward Missoula, where medical teams waited to receive Iron Bill. Whatever decision she ultimately made about her future, Ellie knew that both aspects of her identity would inform the choice. The lethal precision of Ghost Echo and the patient nurturing of Eleanor Reeves combined in ways that made her uniquely effective in either world. 3 weeks later, Eleanor Reeves stood before her class at Bedford Elementary, guiding 24 third graders through the intricacies of perspective drawing. Michael Evans, her quiet student with remarkable talent, had created a mountain landscape that showed intuitive understanding of vanishing points and horizon lines. Beautiful work, Michael, she praised, noting the boy's small smile of pride. You've captured the depth perfectly. The classroom felt both familiar and somehow new after her absence. She had returned 10 days earlier, explaining her disappearance as a family emergency, a cover story supported by official documentation from channels most civilians would never question. Her students had welcomed her back with handmade cards and unrestrained enthusiasm, confirming that her connection with them was genuine rather than merely professional. Iron Bill was recovering at a private medical facility in Maryland, his condition improving steadily under the care of military doctors with appropriate security clearances. Cooper had returned to Montana, though he now maintained regular, secure communications rather than complete isolation. Marshall had resumed his official Pentagon position, working closely with Hayes to dismantle the remaining elements of Shaw's network. The trust had been exposed, its members arrested or under investigation. Shaw himself faced multiple federal charges, including treason and conspiracy. The evidence Cooper had safeguarded for decades proved devastatingly effective, revealing not only Shaw's betrayal, but an entire system of corruption extending into multiple government agencies. When the final bell rang, Ellie watched her students file out with their completed artwork, their faces bright with the simple joy of creation. Michael lingered behind hesitantly, approaching her desk with a folder clutched in his hands. Ms. Reeves, he said quietly, I made something for you while you were gone. He presented the folder, which contained a carefully rendered portrait of Ellie herself depicted teaching at the front of the classroom. The technical skill was impressive for a 9-year-old, but more striking was the expression he had captured, a combination of patience, strength, and watchful alertness that suggested he had perceived more about his teacher than most adults ever noticed. Thank you, Michael, she said, genuinely moved by the gift. This is extraordinary work. My dad says you were a hero, the boy continued, surprising her. Before you were a teacher. Ellie maintained her composure despite her surprise. Your father, he was a Marine. He says he recognized how you move, how you're always aware of everything. He says you have the eyes of someone who protected others. She studied the child more carefully, noting for the first time subtle features that connected him to a younger version of Thomas Cooper. The realization was startling. Cooper had never mentioned family, had seemingly lived in complete isolation for decades. Your father is very observant, she said carefully, and he sounds like a wise man. Michael nodded solemnly. He said I should tell you that some people can be both a teacher and a protector, that the best teachers are always both. With that philosophical observation, The boy gathered his backpack and departed, leaving Ellie to process this unexpected connection. Later, she would make inquiries through secure channels, discovering that Michael Evans was indeed Cooper's grandson, his father a Marine Corps veteran who had settled in Bedford 5 years earlier without knowing Ellie's true identity. Coincidence or part of Cooper's long-term strategy to maintain a distant protective presence with whisper either explanation was equally plausible. As she prepared to leave for the day, Ellie found Principal Gibson waiting in the hallway outside her classroom. "Eleanor," he greeted her warmly. "Got a minute?" She nodded, following him to his office where he closed the door for privacy. "I wanted to discuss the anonymous donation to our arts program." He began, his expression revealing genuine excitement. $5 million specifically designated for expanding the work you've been doing with our students. The board has approved a dedicated arts building with you as program director, if you're interested. The opportunity represented everything she had hoped to accomplish as an educator. Proper facilities, expanded programming, the chance to reach more students with the creative outlet that art provided. Yet it also represented a definitive choice about her future, a commitment to Eleanor Reeves rather than a return to Ghost Echo. "I'd be honored," she said finally. "When would the position begin?" "Next academic year," Gibson explained, "though we'd like you involved in the planning phase immediately if you're willing." "I am," she confirmed, making her decision. Eleanor Reeves would continue her work, building on the foundation she had established over 23 years of teaching. Ghost Echo would remain available if truly needed, but in a supporting role rather than a dominant one. Later that evening, as she sat on her front porch watching the sunset paint the Virginia hills with golden light, Ellie reflected on the curious path her life had taken. From the frozen rooftops of Berlin to a classroom in Bedford, from America's deadliest operative to a teacher guiding young minds toward creative expression. Her satellite phone buzzed with an incoming message, a secure communication from Hayes. "Final report, trust dismantled. Shaw cooperating. 14 indictments, 7 countries involved. Your testimony not required. Status decision needed by month end. Regards, H." The message confirmed what she had suspected. Her operational involvement had concluded successfully. The choice of her future status remained open, awaiting her decision. Ghost Echo could officially return from the dead with all the recognition and restoration that entailed. Or Eleanor Reeves could continue without interruption, her connection to Sentinel Echo remaining classified indefinitely. As she considered her options, a vehicle approached along her driveway, an unmarked government SUV she recognized from previous visits. Marshall emerged carrying a small wooden case under his arm. "Evening, Ghost," he greeted her, climbing the porch steps with the dignified bearing of a career officer. "Hope I'm not intruding." "Never," she assured him, gesturing to the adjacent chair. "Coffee, please." She returned moments later with 2 steaming mugs, finding Marshall gazing thoughtfully across the rolling landscape surrounding her property. "Beautiful place," he commented. "Peaceful." "It serves its purpose," she acknowledged, handing him the coffee. "What brings you to Bedford, Colonel?" Marshall set the wooden case on the small table between them. "Official business, actually. The president asked me to deliver this personally." He opened the case, revealing a Distinguished Service Cross, one of the nation's highest military decorations, nestled in velvet alongside a presidential citation. "Awarded to Master Chief Eleanor Reed posthumously in 1990, Marshall explained, "for extraordinary heroism during the Berlin operation. It's been sitting in storage at Arlington all these years next to an empty grave with your name on it." Ellie studied the medal without touching it, emotions conflicting within her. "Why bring it now?" "Because it's yours, legitimately earned regardless of what identity you choose going forward," Marshall said simply. "The president felt you should have it, even if only you and a handful of others ever know the truth behind it." She lifted the medal from its case, feeling its weight, both physical and symbolic. "Thank you." "There's something else," Marshall continued. "Iron Bill is being awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor for his lifetime of service, including his actions 3 weeks ago. The ceremony is classified, of course, but he's asked if you'll attend." "When?" "Next month. Small ceremony, highest security, just the president, joint chiefs, and a few others with appropriate clearance." Ellie replaced the medal in its case, her decision crystallizing. "I'll be there, but afterward, I'm coming back here." Marshall nodded with understanding. "Eleanor Reeves rather than Ghost Echo." "Both," she corrected, "just with different priorities than before. The school board has approved funding for an expanded arts program. My students need me." "America's deadliest ghost nurturing young artists," Marshall observed with a hint of wonder. "Who would have imagined?" "Life takes unexpected turns," Ellie acknowledged. Sometimes the most important missions aren't the ones that make headlines. They sat in companionable silence as darkness settled over the Virginia countryside. Two operators who had served through America's most challenging covert conflicts, now witnessing the beginning of a new chapter. Iron Bill said something interesting during my last visit, Marshall commented finally. He said you were always the best of us because you never forgot why we fought in the first place. Not for politics or power, but for the future for children like your students, who would never know what dangers had been averted through our actions. Ellie considered this assessment, finding truth in it. Throughout her operational career, she had maintained perspective about the purpose behind the missions, protecting American values and civilians, rather than simply executing targets. He gives me too much credit, she said simply. I don't think so, Marshall disagreed. Your choice now proves his point. You're still serving, just in a different capacity. As Marshall departed, Ellie remained on the porch contemplating the path ahead. Eleanor Reeves would continue teaching art to Bedfordshire children, expanding her program with the mysterious donation that Hayes had arranged. Ghost Echo would remain available for consultation on matters of national security, but operational status would be limited to truly extraordinary circumstances. It wasn't the ending she had imagined when she first joined Sentinel Echo as a young operator with exceptional skills. Nor was it the quiet retirement she had expected as Eleanor Reeves. It was something uniquely suited to her particular journey, a synthesis of the protector and the creator, the ghost and the teacher. In the distance, a shooting star traced a brief, brilliant path across the darkening sky, a reminder that even the most spectacular forces eventually find peace. Ghost Echo, America's deadliest operative, had completed her final mission. Eleanor Reeves' art teacher had important lessons to prepare for tomorrow's class. Both were essential aspects of the same remarkable woman who had finally found a way to honor them both.